It was harder to find the grave than he had expected, even looking for it, but he found it. An ugly grave tipped at an odd angle, its stone topped by a headless, water-stained angel that had the appearance of a gargantuan fungus. It was only when he touched it and felt the chill that he knew for certain. He sat down on the grave, forced himself to become entirely visible. "You're not faded," said Liza's voice. "Anyone can find you." "Good," said Bod. "I want them to find me." "More know Jack Fool than Jack Fool knows," said Liza. The moon was rising, and it was huge now and low in the sky. Bod wondered if it would be overdoing it if he began to whistle. "I can see him!" A man ran towards him, tripping and stumbling, 2 other men close behind. Bod was aware of the dead clustered around them, watching the scene, but he forced himself to ignore them. He had made himself more comfortable on the ugly grave. He felt like the bait in a trap, and it was not a good feeling. The bull-like man was the first to reach the grave, followed closely by the man with white hair who had done all the talking, and the tall blonde man. Bod stayed where he was. The man with the white hair said, "Ah, the elusive Dorian boy, I presume. Astonishing. There's our Jack Frost hunting the world over, and here you are, just where he left you 13 years ago. Bod said, "That man killed my family." "Indeed he did. Why?" "Does it matter? You're never going to tell anyone." "Well, then it's no skin off your nose to tell me, is it?" The white-haired man barked to laugh. "Ha, funny boy. What I want to know is, how have you lived in a graveyard for 13 years without anyone catching wise?" "I'll answer your question if you answer mine." The bull-necked man said, "You don't talk to Mr. Dandy like that, little snot. I'll split you, I will." The white-haired man took another step closer to the grave. "Hush, Jack Tar. All right, an answer for an answer. We, my friends and I, are members of a fraternal organisation known as the Jacks of all trades, or the Knaves, or by other names. We go back an extremely long way. We remember things that most people have forgotten. The old knowledge." Bod said, "Magic. You know a little magic." The man nodded agreeably, if you want to call it that, but it's a very specific sort of magic. There's a magic you take from death. Something leaves the world, something else comes into it. "You killed my family for what? For magic powers? That's ridiculous." "No, we killed you for protection. Long time ago, one of our people, this was back in Egypt, in pyramid days, he foresaw that one day there would be a child born who would walk the borderland between the living and the dead. That is, if this child grew to adulthood, it would mean the end of our order and all we stand for. We had people casting nativities before London was a village, and we had your family in our sights before New Amsterdam became New York. And we sent what we thought was the best and the sharpest and the most dangerous of all the Jacks to deal with you, to do it properly, so we could take all the bad juju and make it work for us instead and keep everything tickety-boo for another 5,000 years. Only he didn't." Bod looked at the 3 men. "So where is he? Why isn't he here?" The blonde man said, "We can take care of you. He's got a good nose on him as our Jack Frost. He's on the trail of your little girlfriend. Can't leave any witnesses. Not to something like this." Bod leaned forward, dug his hands into the wild weed grass that grew on the unkempt grave. "Come and get me," was all he said. The blonde man grinned, the bull-necked man lunged, and yes, even Mr. Dandy took a few steps forward. Bod pushed his fingers as deep as he could into the grass, and he pulled his lips back from his teeth, and he said 3 words in a language that was already ancient before the Indigo Man was born. "Scar, far, kavar." He opened the ghoul gate. The grave swung open like a trap door. In the deep hole beneath the door, Bod could see stars, a darkness filled with glimmering lights. The bullman, Mr. Tar, at the edge of the hole, could not stop and stumbled surprised into the darkness. Mr. Nimble jumped towards Bod, his arms extended, leaping over the hole. Bod watched as the man stopped in the air at the zenith of his spring and hung there for a moment before he was sucked through the ghoul gate down and down. Mr. Dandy stood at the edge of the ghoul gate on a lip of stone and looked into the darkness beneath him. Then he raised his eyes to Bod, and thin-lipped he smiled. "I don't know what you just did," said Mr. Dandy, "but it didn't work." He pulled his gloved hand out of his pocket, holding a gun pointed directly at Bod. "I should have just done this 13 years ago," said Mr. Dandy. "You can't trust other people. If it's important, you have to do it yourself." A desert wind came up from the open ghoul gate, hot and dry with grit in it. Bod said, "There's a desert down there. If you look for water, you should find some. There's things to eat if you look hard, but don't antagonise or annoy the night gaunts. Avoid Ghoulheim. The ghouls might wipe your memories and make you into one of them, or they might wait until you've rotted down and then eat you. Either way, you can do better." The gun barrel did not waver. Mr. Dandy said, "Why are you telling me this?" Bod pointed across the graveyard. "Because of them," he said. And as he said it, as Mr. Dandy glanced away, only for a moment, Bod faded. Mr. Dandy's eyes flickered away and back, but Bod was no longer by the broken statue. From deep in the hole something called like the lonely wail of a night bird. Mr. Dandy looked around, his forehead a slash, his body a mass of indecision and rage. "Where are you?" he growled. "The deuce take you! Where are you?" He thought he heard a voice say, "Ghoul gates are made to be opened and then closed again. You can't leave them open. They want to close." The lip of the hole shuddered and shook. Mr. Dandy had been in an earthquake once, years before, in Bangladesh. It felt like that. The earth juddered and Mr. Dandy fell, would have fallen into the darkness, but he caught hold of the fallen headstone, threw his arms about it and locked on. He did not know what was beneath him, only that he had no wish to find out. The earth shook and he felt the headstone began to shift beneath his weight. He looked up. The boy was there, looking down at him curiously. "I'm going to let the gate close now," he said. "I think if you keep holding on to that thing it might close on you and crush you, or it might just absorb you and make you into part of the gate. Don't know, but I'm giving you a chance, more than you ever gave my family." A ragged judder. Mr. Dandy looked up into the boy's grey eyes and he swore. Then he said, "You can't ever escape us. We're the Jacks of all trades. We're everywhere. It's not over." "It is for you," said Bod, "the end of your people and all you stand for, like your man in Egypt predicted. You didn't kill me. You were everywhere. Now it's all over." Then Bod smiled. "That's what Silas is doing, isn't it? That's where he is." Mr. Dandy's face confirmed everything that Bod had suspected. And what Mr. Dandy might have said to that Bod would never know, because the man let go of the headstone and tumbled slowly down into the open ghoul gate. Bod said, "Way Carandos." The ghoul gate was a grave once more, nothing more. Something was tugging at his sleeve. Fortinbras Barterbury looked up at him. "Bod, that man by the chapel. He's going up the hill." The man Jack followed his nose. He left the others, not least because the stink of Jack Dandy's cologne made finding anything subtler impossible. He could not find the boy by scent, not here. The boy smelled like the graveyard, but the girl smelled like her mother's house, like the dab of perfume she had touched to her neck before school that morning. She smelled like a victim too, like fear sweat, thought Jack, like his quarry or prey. And wherever she was, the boy would be too, sooner or later. His hand closed round the handle of his knife and he walked up the hill. He was almost at the top of the hill when it occurred to him, a hunch he knew was a truth, that Jack Dandy and the rest of them were gone. Good, he thought. There's always room at the top. The man Jack's own rise through the organisation had slowed and stopped after he had failed to kill all of the Dorian family. It was as if he had no longer been trusted. Now, soon, everything would change. At the top of the hill, the man Jack lost the girl's scent. He knew she was near. He retraced his steps, almost casually caught her perfume again, about 50 feet away, beside a small mausoleum with a closed metal gateway. He pulled on the gate and it swung wide. Her scent was strong now. He could smell that she was afraid. He pulled down the coffins one by one from their shelves and let them clatter onto the ground, shattering the old wood, spilling their contents onto the mausoleum floor. No, she was not hiding any of those. Then where? He examined the wall. Solid. He went down on his hands and knees, pulled the last coffin out and reached back. His hand found an opening. "Scarlet!" he called, trying to remember how he would have called her name when he was Mr. Frost. But he could not even find that part of himself any longer. He was the man Jack now, and that was all it was. On his hands and knees he crawled through the hole in the wall. When Scarlet heard the crushing noise from above, she made her way carefully down the steps, her left hand touching the wall, her right hand holding the little LED keyring, which cast just enough light to allow her to see where she was placing her feet. She made it to the bottom of the stone steps and edged back up to the open chamber, her heart thumping. She was scared. Scared of nice Mr. Frost and his scarier friends, scared of this room and its memories, even, if she was honest, a little afraid of Bod. He was no longer a quiet boy with a mystery, a link to her childhood. He was something different, something not quite human. She thought, I wonder what Mum thinks right now. She'll be phoning Mr. Frost's house over and over to find out when I'm going to get back. She thought, if I get out of this alive, I'm going to force her to get me a phone. It's ridiculous. I'm the only person in my year who doesn't have her own phone, practically. She thought, I miss my mum. She had not thought anyone human could move that silently through the dark, but a gloved hand closed upon her mouth. A voice that was only barely recognisable as Mr. Frost said without emotion, do anything clever, do anything at all, and I will cut your throat. Nod if you understand me. Scarlet nodded. Bod saw the chaos in the floor of the Frobisher mausoleum, the fallen coffins with their contents scattered across the aisle. There were many Frobishers and many Pettifers, all in various states of upset and consternation. He's already down there, said Ephraim. Thank you, said Bod. He clambered through the hole into the inside of the hill and he went down the stairs. Bod saw as the Dead See. He saw the steps and he saw the chamber at the bottom. And when he got halfway down the steps, he saw the man Jack holding Scarlet. He had her arm twisted up behind her back and a large, wicked boning knife at her neck. The man Jack looked up in the darkness. Hello, boy, he said. Bod said nothing. He concentrated on his fade, took another step. You think I can't see you, said the man Jack, and you're right. I can't, not really, but I can smell your fear, and I can smell you, hear you move and hear you breathe. And now that I know that you're about your clever vanishing trick, I can feel you. Say something now. Say it so I can hear it, or I start to cut little pieces out of the young lady. Do you understand me? Yes, said Bod, his voice echoing in the chamber room. I understand. Good, said Jack. Now, come here. Let's have a chat. Bod began to walk down the steps. He concentrated on the fear, on rising the level of panic in the room and making the terror something tangible. Stop that, said the man Jack. Whatever it is you're doing, don't do it. Bod let it go. You think, said Jack, that you can do your little magics on me? Do you know what I am, boy? Bod said, You're a Jack. You killed my family, and you should have killed me. Jack raised an eyebrow. He said, I should have killed you? Oh, yes. The old man said that if you let me grow to adulthood, your order would be destroyed. I did. You failed and you lost. My order goes back before Babylon. Nothing can harm it. They didn't tell you, did they? Bod was standing 5 paces from the man Jack. Those 4, they were the last of the Jacks. What was it? Krakow and Vancouver and Melbourne, all gone. Scarlet said, Please, Bod, make him let go of me. Don't worry, said Bod with a calm he could not feel. He said to Jack, There's no point in hurting her. There's no point in killing me. Don't you understand? There isn't even an order of Jacks of all trades. Not any more. Jack nodded thoughtfully. If this is true, said Jack, and if now I am the Jack all alone, then I have an excellent reason for killing you both. Bod said nothing. Pride, said the man, Jack. Pride in my work. Pride in finishing what I began. And then he said, What are you doing? Bod's hair prickled. He could feel a smoke tendril presence twining through the room. He said, It's not me. It's the Sleer. It guards the treasure that's buried here. Don't lie. Scarlet said, He's not lying. It's true. Jack said, True? Buried treasure? Don't make me... The Sleer guards the treasure for other master. Who said that? Said the man Jack, looking around. You heard it? Asked Bod, puzzled. I heard it, said Jack, yes. Scarlet said, I didn't hear anything. The man Jack said, What is this place, boy? Where are we? Before Bod could speak, the Sleer's voice spoke, echoing through the chamber. This is the place of the treasure. This is the place of power. This is where the Sleer guards and waits for our master to return. Bod said, Jack? The man Jack tilted his head on one side. He said, It's good to hear my name in your mouth, boy. If you'd used it before, I could have found you earlier. Jack, what was my real name? What did my family call me? Why should that matter to you now? Bod said, The Sleer told me to find my name. What was it? Jack said, Let me see. Was it Peter or Paul or Roderick? You look like a Roderick. Maybe you were a... Stephen. He was playing with the boy. You might as well tell me. You're going to kill me anyway, said Bod. Jack shrugged and nodded in the darkness as if to say, obviously. I want you to let the girl go, said Bod. Let Scarlet go. Jack peered into the darkness, then said, That's an altar stone, isn't it? I suppose so. And a knife, and a cup, and a brooch. He was smiling now in the darkness. Bod could see it on his face, a strange, delighted smile that seemed out of place on that face. A smile of discovery and of understanding. Scarlet couldn't see anything but a blackness that sometimes erupted in flashes inside her eyeballs, but she could hear the delight in Jack's voice. The man Jack said, So the brotherhood is over and the convocation is at an end. And yet, if there are no more Jacks of all trades but me, what does it matter? There can be a new brotherhood, more powerful than the last. Power, echoed the Sleer. This is perfect, said the man Jack. Look at us. We are in a place for which my people have hunted for thousands of years, with everything necessary for the ceremony waiting for us. It makes you believe in providence or luck, doesn't it? Or in the massed prayers of all the Jacks who have gone before us, that at our lowest ebb we are given this. Bod could feel the Sleer listening to Jack's words, could feel the low surus of excitement building in the chamber. The man Jack said, I'm going to put out my hands, boy. Scarlet, my knife is still at your throat. Do not try to run when I let go of you. Boy, you will place the cup and the knife and the brooch in my hand. "The treasure of the Slier," whispered the triple voice. "It always comes back. We will guard it for the master." Bod bent down, took the objects from the altar stone, put them in Jack's open gloved hand. Jack grinned. "Scarlet, I'm going to release you. When I take the knife away, I want you to lie down, face down on the ground, with your hands behind your head. Move or try anything, and I will kill you painfully. Do you understand?" She gulped. Her mouth was dry, but she took one shaky step forward. Her right arm, which had been twisted up to the small of her back, was now numb, and she felt only pins and needles in her shoulder. She lay down, her cheek resting on the packed earth. "We are dead," she thought, and it was not even tinged with emotion. It felt as if she were watching something happening to other people, a surreal drama that had turned into a game of murder in the dark. She heard the noise of Jack taking hold of Bod. Bod's voice said, "Let her go." The man Jack's voice said, "If you do everything I say, I won't kill her. I won't even hurt her." "I don't believe you. She can identify you." "No." The adult voice seemed certain. "She can't." And then it said, 10,000 years, and the knife is still sharp." The admiration in the voice was palpable. "Boy, go and kneel on that altar stone, hands behind your back, now." "It has been so long," said the Slier, but all Scarlet heard was a slithering noise, as if of enormous coils winding around the chamber. But the man Jack heard. "You want to know your name, boy, before I spill your blood on the stone?" Bod felt the cold of the knife at his neck, and in that moment Bod understood. Everything slowed, everything came into focus. "I know my name," he said. "I'm Nobody Owens. That's who I am." And kneeling at the cold altar stone, it all seemed very simple. "Slier," he said to the chamber, "do you still want a master?" "The Slier guards the treasure until the master returns." "Well," said Bod, "haven't you finally found the master you've been looking for?" He could sense the Slier writhing and expanding, hear a noise like the scratching of 1,000 dead twigs, as if some huge and muscular was snaking its way around the inside of the chamber. And then for the first time Bod saw the Slier. Afterwards he was never able to describe what he had seen. Something huge, yes, something with the body of an enormous snake, but with the head of what? There were 3 of them, 3 heads, 3 necks. The faces were dead, as if someone had constructed dolls from parts of corpses of humans and of animals. The faces were covered in purple patterns, swirled in tattooed in swirls of indigo, turning the dead faces into strange, expressive, monstrous things. The faces of the Slier nuzzled the air about Jack tentatively, as if it wanted to stroke or caress him. "What's happening?" said Jack. "What is it? What does it do?" "It's called the Slier. It guards the place. It needs a master to tell it what to do," said Bod. Jack hefted the flint knife in his hand. "Beautiful," he said to himself. And then, "Of course, it's been waiting for me. And yes, obviously I am its new master." The Slier encircled the interior of the chamber. "Master," it said, like a dog who had been waiting patiently for too long. It said, "Master," again, as if testing the word to see how it tasted. And it tasted good. So it said it one more time, with a sigh of delight and of longing. "Master." Jack looked down at Bod. 13 years ago I missed you. And now we are reunited. The end of one order and the beginning of another. Goodbye, boy." And with one hand he lowered the knife to the boy's throat. The other hand held the goblet. "Bod," said Bod. "Not boy, Bod." He raised his voice. "Slier," he said, "what will you do with your new master?" The Slier sighed. "We will protect him until the end of the time. The Slier will hold him in its coils forever and never let him endure the dangers of the world." "Then protect him," said Bod. "Now." "I am your master. You will obey me," said the man Jack. "The Slier has waited so long," said the triple voice of the Slier triumphantly. "So long a time." And it began to loop its huge, lazy coils around the man Jack. The man Jack dropped the goblet. Now he had a knife in each hand, a flint knife and a knife with a black bone handle, and he said, "Get back! Keep away from me! Don't get any closer!" He slashed out with the knife as the Slier twined about him, and in a huge crushing movement engulfed the man Jack in its coils. Bod ran over to Scarlet and helped her up. "I want to see," she said. "I want to see what's happening." She pulled out her LED light and turned it on. What Scarlet saw was not what Bod saw. She did not see the Slier, and that was a mercy. She saw the man Jack, though. She saw the fear on his face, which made him look like Mr. Frost had once looked. In his terror he was once again the nice man who had driven her home. He was floating in the air, 5, then 10 feet above the ground, slashing wildly into the air with 2 knives, trying to stab something she could not see, in a display that was obviously having no effect. Mr. Frost, the man Jack, whoever he was pulled away from them, forced back until he was spread-eagled, legs and arms wide and flailing up against the side of the chamber wall. It seemed to Scarlet that Mr. Frost was being pulled through the wall, pulled onto a rock, was being swallowed up by it. Now there was nothing visible but a face. He was shouting wildly, desperately, shouting at Bod to call the thing off, to save him, please, please. Then the man's face was pulled through the wall and the voice was silenced. Bod walked back to the altar stone. He picked up the stone knife and the goblet and the brooch from the ground, and he replaced them where they belonged. He left the black metal knife where it fell. Scarlet said, "I thought you said the sleeve couldn't hurt people. I thought all it could do was frighten us." "Yes," said Bod, "but it wanted a master to protect. It told me so." Scarlet said, "You mean you knew? You knew that would happen?" "Yes, I hoped it would." He helped her up the steps and out into the chaos of the Frobisher mausoleum. "I'll need to clean this all up," said Bod casually. Scarlet tried not to look at the things on the floor. They stepped out into the graveyard. Scarlet said dully once more, "You knew that would happen." This time Bod said nothing.